Hey guys, and welcome to our live Q&A. I hope you're all doing well and hope you're all having a productive week so far. Happy Friday. Hope you all got some nice plans for the weekend as well. So if you aren't used to these Q&As, basically I'll be on hand for the whole thing to answer any questions you have. Obviously, I'm a graphic designer. If you're a subscriber of the channel, you'll probably know this already. But anyone new, my name's Rory Davenport. I'm a professional graphic designer, the lead graphic designer for Graphic Designer Pro, this channel. I'm here to answer any design-related questions you have. And I'm also going to be taking a look at graphic styles in Adobe Illustrator today. So this is kind of doubling up as a mini tutorial. Now this will be a beginner's tutorial, so if you're already familiar with the likes of graphic styles, then we're not going to go into any crazy complex detail with it, but we're going to go over the basics of it, how you can use it, and how you can use it to speed up your workflow as well in Illustrator. So that's going to be the focus of the video today, and of course I'll keep an eye on the chat. If there are any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask. So what I'm going to do is jump into Adobe Illustrator, and we already have some assets set up. So these are the assets we're going to be working with to begin with here. So we've got two lots of live text, and we'll show you why we've got two lots later on in the video. And we've got a very simple graphic icon here as well. So just showing you that you can use this with not only simple vector designs, you can use it with live text and things as well to make customizations to it. So it's a really useful feature. And it's not only graphic styles we're looking at here, it's actually the appearance panel as well. So if you're not familiar with the appearance panel, it's a really, really useful feature panel to use in Adobe Illustrator. We're in Adobe Illustrator 2021 right now, but I believe you've still got these in, even Illustrator CS6. So you should be fine if you're running an older version of Illustrator as well. So what we'll do is we'll just jump straight in. What I'm going to do first is just select one of these objects. Now, we're going to be focusing on the appearance panel first, because that's how we set up our graphic styles. So the idea is that we apply properties to our selection, to our vectors, to our designs, and then we can save all of those properties as a single graphic style. So very useful to use. Now, I've got this text selected here. If I go over to my appearance panel, which I've got set up here, hopefully you can see this all right. This may be a little bit small on your screens, depending on what you're watching this on. But you can always try this out for yourself afterwards as well. If you don't have the appearance panel or graphic styles panel within your workspace by default, remember, you can always go up to Window in the top menu and you will find them within here. So we've got Appearance up at the top. This is always in alphabetical order. And we've also got graphic styles within there as well. So I've got these already set up over on the right-hand side here. And yeah, so with my text selected, you'll see that we don't actually have any fill or stroke colors appearing within here. So basically, the appearance panel will show you every property that you have applied to your selection. So if it's a vector graphic, it will normally show you the fill color if there is one, and the stroke color if there is one, as well as things like any effects you've applied to it potentially. But by default, if you select text, it's not actually going to show anything. So this is the case with text. It can also happen with graphics if you've used something like the Pathfinder options on them, for example. So I think if I select one of these down here, it's the same. But if I click on another one, you will see that we have our black fill applied and we have no stroke applied, but both of them are still appearing within this appearance panel. So a workaround with that, if you have a selection that doesn't show the fill or the stroke, is to just change the actual fill color. So if I just go to my control panel or over to the left-hand side where we have our fill tile, I'm actually just going to click that down and change this to have no fill. So the white square with the red cross through it. So the text is still there, it just doesn't actually have any fill applied to it. And what we can do is apply a new fill or stroke from the appearance panel. So we can do this via the icons down at the bottom of the panel. At the bottom left, there's a square without a fill, so that's to add a new stroke. And funnily enough, the square next to it that does have a fill is to add a new fill. So if I simply click on the new fill option, you can see this is automatically adding a black fill to our text again, and it's also automatically adding a stroke property here as well, but obviously there is no stroke applied to it. So yeah, this is really useful, and the cool thing about this is that we can actually add multiple fills or multiple strokes to your selection, and we'll show you what you can do with that. It may seem a little bit strange to do that initially, but we can actually adjust them individually and layer them. So this is really cool. So with my fill value here, I've still got the option just to drop this down, and I can select another color, for example. And yeah, really easy to change that the way we would normally change the fill color. Same goes for the stroke. If I click on that, I could select an orange stroke, and we've got our stroke value there that I can bump up. I could also click on the word stroke, and we get our stroke properties themselves up as well. So I could round the corners, for example. I could create a dashed line. I've got all the same functionality that we would normally have when dealing with fills and strokes. So that's good, but we can do that anyway, so nothing really particularly special about what we're doing there. But what I could do, I'm just going to remove our stroke again, and go back down to our add new fill button again. I'm going to click it once more, so we've got a new fill added, and you can see this is added to the top. So this appearance panel works in a similar way to our layers panel. Whatever's sitting on top is obviously going to appear first, and we can rearrange this simply by clicking and dragging, and you'll see a blue line appearing, so we can change the order of these fills. So what I'll do is with the new fill, let's select a different color. I'm going to go with like a dark purple here, for example, and I'll drag this in behind our magenta fill. So we've got this fill sitting here, and what I can do is actually apply effects to each of these fills as well, or the stroke. So you actually have to make sure that it's selected first. So depending on which fill you want the effect to apply to, make sure it's selected first. And down at the bottom, next to our add new stroke and add new fill buttons, there's an FX icon. So if I click that, that basically creates this drop down menu. And this is the same as all of our effects that we can normally get from the effect top menu in Illustrator. So yeah, we can warp this, we can apply all sorts of different effects to it. One of the most useful ones to use those, though, is the transform effect. So if I go down to distort and transform, and then down to transform, it's going to bring up our transform effect panel here. And if you've not used this, this is a really useful way to make adjustments based on the horizontal and vertical values. We can also move your objects with precise pixel values this way. We can rotate it, and what's really cool is we can create copies as well, so we'll get to that in just a second. What I'm going to do first is just bump up my horizontal move value here. So you can see if I do that, our dark purple background fill is starting to move away from the original fill. So obviously this is being treated individually from the magenta fill that we'd applied originally. I can click OK, and the cool thing about this is it's all still one object. It's not like we've just duplicated the text, and this is all still completely live text as well. So if I press T on my keyboard for my type tool, we can completely edit this to our liking. So that's a very simple example of what you could do. I can also click on any one of these and just delete them. So with our dark purple fill selected, I'm just going to click on this bin icon in the bottom right of the panel, click on that once, and there you go, it's deleted. So here's a case in point of how not to use it. So you always need to make sure that whatever you're wanting to apply these effects to is selected first. So I obviously clicked off the type there, I deleted that, and obviously nothing's changed on the type because it wasn't selected. So this is something that's really easy to do. Always make sure that your object is selected first. So let's go back to that purple fill, click the bin icon once more, and we're back to our original type with a magenta fill. So what we could also do, let's apply a stroke instead this time. We'll go with the dark purple again, why not? And let's bump up the stroke value. And if you're familiar with strokes, we can basically align this in different ways. I could align this to the outside of the path, the inside, or just centered against the path. But we can also change this. I could just drag this stroke in behind the fill. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky because you've got this stroke value here, but if you just click on the blue area itself, I can click and drag this down, and that's now sitting behind the fill. And I can now go and adjust the weight some more, so we can make this slightly bigger than the text here. Go something like that. And I'm going to go back to my FX. Let's go down to Distort and Transform, and then Transform again. So let's bring up our Transform Effect panel once more. And what I'm going to do is just make some very minor adjustments to the horizontal and vertical move values. So let's go with 0.5 pixels on each. So all that's doing is Illustrator is telling it to move that stroke by 0.5 pixels horizontally and vertically. So if I click off this, it's very subtle, 0.5 pixels, so you'll barely see it move. If this was obviously a higher value, it would be more obvious. But what we can do is go down to this copies field here, and if I up the number of copies, what that's doing is it's obviously creating a copy of this stroke, and every time it creates a copy, it's moving it by that same 0.5 pixels. So we can actually create this cool extruded looking text effect just through this. So let's go with 53, that's looking good. Click OK, and there you have it. And again, this is still completely editable. It's still one shape as well. It's one object. There's no actual duplicates being made. It's all done within the appearance panel. Another thing to note as well is with this text selected, you'll see that we still have a fill and stroke value within our usual areas. So the control panel, I've got the same over my properties panel and also over on the left-hand toolbar. If I was to add another fill, for example, let's change the one underneath to orange, just to showcase this some more. It depends which one you have selected in your appearance panel as to which one you will see in the rest of your workspace, if that makes sense. So I can still go and change this. Let's double click on the fill tile once more. Let's go with like a turquoise color instead. Click OK, and that's updating. Same goes for the fill as well. The stroke. But yeah, very easy to use. Now, what's cool about this is we can now go and save all of these properties into a graphic style. So this is what we were talking about initially. So I'm going to delete that fill we created there. We don't need that. So we've got these properties that we've applied that's creating this effect. If I go to my graphic styles panel, you can see we already have some default graphic styles set up within here. Now, if you've opened this for the first time and you're seeing this, these are just the Illustrator default. So I've not created these. Got some quite interesting looking ones as well, which we'll look at in a second. But all I need to do is click on this plus button down here. So similar to adding something like a new layer. If I click that, it's basically just created a new graphic style from the properties that we had applied to our selection here. So yeah, very easy to use. The beauty of this is I could select some other text now, and all I need to do is click on that new graphic style, and this automatically applies to that text. So that's where this is a huge time saver. If you're trying to apply the same effects or the same styles properties to multiple objects, instead of having to do it from scratch every time, all you need to do is create a graphic style via the appearance panel, and then it's just simply a case of selecting the object you want to apply it to, clicking on that newly created graphic style in your graphic styles panel, and voila. So very, very easy. Let's go back to our original type, and I'll just show you some of the Illustrator default ones. So we've got some interesting looking things here. Some of them are better than others, shall we say. This one, it's quite interesting actually to click on them and then go back to your appearance panel to see how they've been created. So this actually has a yellow fill in behind, which I could go and edit as well if I wanted to. Let's make this a cyan color, and it's got this interesting pattern applied to it. So that's another thing to remember with applying a fill. It doesn't just have to be a solid color. Remember, Illustrator has lots of interesting patterns and things already included in the software. So for example, let's open this fill up, and if I click the little menu in the top right of this panel, we'll get this drop down menu. I can go to open swatch library, And we've got all of these different color libraries. Most of these are just colors, but we also have patterns here. We have some decorative patterns, nature. There's also basic graphics. So I use these quite a lot. We've got some basic graphics, dots and lines and textures as well. So if I just select basic graphics dots, I'll get this pop up here. And these are just black dots by default. But what we can easily do is apply one of these and then go in and edit that pattern and change the colors and properties of that pattern itself. So yeah, let's apply this kind of halftone dot look to this type, for example. Again, we could offset this. I could go to my FX dropdown, distort and transform again. And I'm just going to, again, move this with my horizontal and vertical values here. I always like to try and keep these the same. I think for something like an offset area, it just creates a slightly nicer look, you know, working with 45-degree angles, essentially. So I think that's looking good. Let's click OK. And yeah, so there we have it in here. Now, if I was to, let me see, double click on that swatch, that pattern swatch, essentially, if I click out of here, you'll see we have the actual pattern set up here. So I could click and drag over these dots and we can just go ahead and change the color of these. So let's instead go with, what will I go with? A green maybe? Another turquoisey color. We want it to contrast a little bit. And I can just click done up at the top. And we're not going to see anything right now because I've zoomed right in. But as you can see, the type we have selected, this dot pattern has now changed to that green color. So these are quite easy to edit as well. That's the beauty of them. And, you know, from there, I could just go and create a new graphic style if I wanted to. So really, really easy to use and set up. We can get really quite creative with them as well, especially when it comes to using strokes. What we could do is we could do an example of this. So let's just grab my line segment tool. I'm just going to apply a simple black stroke to this, 1 point. And oh, I've lost my appearance panel, so let's go to window, appearance, there it is. So as you can see, I've got my stroke set up within here, that's all good. And I'm just trying to think about what I could create here. So let's up the stroke weight of this for a start. Let's go with something quite chunky. We'll go with something like 30 point. And we could add a few more strokes. So let's add one more. I'm going to change the color of this. We'll just, again, go with something bright and eye-catching. We'll go with this kind of orangey color. I'll take this stroke weight right back down to something like 2 point. Again, we could apply some effects to this, distort and transform, and I'm just going to bump the vertical value. So I'm going to create a kind of like almost pinstripe effect here. So go with -5 pixels, click OK, and what I can do as well is with this stroke selected, I can, if I can, click and drag, and if I drag it down to the plus button, that's going to create a duplicate of it. So if you click and drag a fill or a stroke down to the plus button at the bottom, that's basically going to duplicate it. And you can see within here as well, I forgot to mention, when we apply an effect, you will see it actually listed underneath the whatever it is. If it's a stroke, if it's a fill, you can see we've got transform here. So if I just click on that again, it's going to bring up the transform effect again, and we can edit this more if we want to. So in this case, with our duplicated stroke, I'll make this +5 in pixels instead. So that's fine. Let's click OK. And I'll maybe create one more stroke. Let's just put something in the middle here. Again, I'm just dragging our top stroke down to create a duplicate. And I'm going to change the color of this one. Let's go with another bright color. And what I'm going to do here is change the stroke weight. We're going to bump this up again. We'll go with 20 point for this example. And I'm going to make this a dashed line instead. So let's go with something a little bit different. I'm going to make it quite a short dash, so maybe a 2 point dash. And then we'll up the gap to maybe 6 point. That's fine for this example. This is just a rough example anyway. And I can change my transform again, and I'm just going to get rid of the movement of this, so I'll put that back to 0. and click OK. I could just delete that effect as well. That would basically do the same thing. So maybe a little bit difficult to see, but I've almost created this kind of train track looking stroke here. So again, this is all just applied to a single path. I can move this around, but where this is cool is if I was to click and drag a circle out, it's obviously remembering my last properties. Let's just grab our original stroke again. So we've got all these appearances applied. I'm going to click plus on my graphic styles panel. So we've created a new graphic style. Let's select my circle now, click once on my new graphic style, and that's now being applied around this circle. So really very easy to use, and yeah, we can get quite creative with it, as you can see. And obviously it doesn't just apply to text and strokes as well. So we've got a simple design here. And another few things to note. So if I go to my outline view here, you can see most of these elements are outlined, but one of them is actually set as a stroke, which I've not expanded yet. So it's just one thing to be wary of if you're applying a graphic style to multiple elements like this. So let's go and apply my first one I created. So this isn't quite working in the way we'd want it. So what I'd have to make sure I do is grab the path that has a stroke applied to it. Let's go up to Object, Path, and then Outline Stroke. And now if I was to click and drag over it all again, apply that graphic style, it's working better, but you can still see we've got some issues where it's overlapping. So in this case, this is something where I would create a compound path from this. So if you're not familiar with compound paths, that's basically a way of saying to Illustrator that you want multiple objects to be treated as a single object. So even though they're not connecting in any way, it's going to still treat it as a single object. So to do that, you can go up to Object, down to Compound Path, and then Make, or the keyboard shortcut is Command 8 or Control 8 on a PC. So nice and easy, and if I was to go and apply that same graphic style, this is much more like it. This is applying to the whole thing as a single shape instead now. So just a few small tips and things to think about. Again, with this selected, I could still go and change the fill color if I wanted to. Very easy to do. Yeah, so that's really it for an overview of graphic styles and the appearance panel. Definitely get using it if you don't already. It really is quite intuitive to use, and yeah, you can get really quite creative with it as well, especially with all the effects we have at our disposal in Adobe Illustrator. So yeah, that's pretty much going to round it up for this one, guys. If you've got any questions, do let me know. Even retrospectively, this is going to be on our YouTube channel, so you can always comment down below, and we check our videos all the time for new comments so we can reply to them very easily. So yeah, that'll do it. If you're interested in learning more about graphic design, we do have a free training as well. I'll put a link in the chat in just a moment, so you can always check that out if you want to. We basically go over some very useful tips for new designers, how to start designing better, and yeah, all sorts. So I'll link that down below if you want to check that out. If you've not already checked out as well, we have a brand new video on the channel that was just uploaded earlier this afternoon on how to make your designs pop. Now, anyone who's worked with clients may have had a client saying that to them before or asking that of them, and it's always a really tricky one to know actually what they mean. It's such a vague term, so we're kind of breaking down what they mean when they ask this, and how you can go about adding more pop to your designs. So it's a bit fun, very easy to follow, so check that out if you haven't already. And yeah, we're going to be doing these live Q&As every week for the next few weeks at least, so keep your eyes on the channel next week for when we're going to be doing next week's one, that may be earlier in the week. So like I say, keep your eye on the channel. But I think that'll do it for today, guys. I'll see you next week though.